opportunity. Um, so basically, I will connect to some of the things that has been covered. So what we are doing is we are doing machine learning today and deep learning tomorrow. The two aspects of artificial intelligence, so as to say. And then we'll cover like what are the basic things a little bit, and then how to do using MATLAB. Most of the operations that we talk about in the theoretical concept as well. So I'll refer to where it is used in the theoretical concept, and then we'll talk about how we can do in MATLAB. So a brief background of myself. So my name is, as Dr. Dave mentioned, so I'm Dr. Shovik Chatterjee. So I'm based out of Delhi in our MathWorks office. Basically, our team is involved with academic collaboration. So we work with multiple academia, with different. I mean, it's all IITs essentially, and then NITs and different other colleges as well. So it depends on the way it needs to be done. We work on research in course building projects. How do we do in terms of industry collaborations? Because we have this huge presence in industry, so we kind of try to figure out what the industry needs and work with academia as well in a way so that we can put that aspect. In terms of question answer, how do are we doing? I mean, it any specific way? If we can have like we can stop in between and then ask for question answer.
Sir, in the chat box,
And
you will get the
yes,
question,
yes.
sir. In the chat box, you will get
Okay.
the question.
Yes. Yes. Sure. Sure. That makes sense. Okay. Um, so I'll occasionally look into the chat window and then stop at certain times. So feel free to just post your questions in the chat window, and we can look into that. So my background is in mechanical engineering. I did my undergraduate, master's, PhD. So undergraduate from Jadavpur University and master's PhD from Virginia Tech and a postdoc from University of Illinois at Chicago. It was all in biomedical and engineering, and we used to do loads of experimental data processing through principal component analysis and those type of things. So it was like around 5-6 years back as well. Then the term artificial intelligence was not that popular. So many of the things we did now fall into the category of artificial intelligence as well. So I'll talk about some of those aspects. Um, so now talking about machine learning. So again, I'll come go over. I'll give a brief overview in the beginning for our 2-3 slides, and then switch to completely machine learning, and then we'll continue from where I end essentially tomorrow today with deep learning tomorrow. Um, so say for example now. Okay. Why do this entire concept of artificial intelligence come into the picture nowadays so often? I mean, it was all there. Computer scientists has been doing machine learning, deep learning from 19 like early 19th century. So it's nothing new. It's just that like today, it is more accessible. Everybody else are doing also, and it's not like just that is the case. There is a reason for that. The reason particularly is there is loads of data. Um, so if we think about any traditional programming, we have been using computers, right? For traditional programming means like if there can be normal if else statement or a for loop or just solving a numerical equation. We can have like a second order ODE for many of the equations, right? It can be a mass spring damper type of equation, or it can be DC motor, wave equation, heat equation, any kind of equation. It can be modeled by, the second order or third order, any kind of numerical equation, numerical methods which we can use to solve. Now the thing is, we can use computer to solve those things, right? What used to happen is we give the data to the computer and program to the computer. That program can be anything. It can be an image processing algorithm problem, or it can be a numerical equation like a one-third trapezoidal rule, Simpson type of a problem, Runge-Kutta method. So we put that in a computer and we get that. That is a traditional way of how we use computer to solve programming methods. And we have been doing that. This has been there for a long, long time. But now when we have access to data as well, like say for example, if we have to model the temperature of North India, say, uh, do we have an equation to model that? I mean, there can be loads of heat transfer equation. There are different wave equations and things like that, but that's not ideal always. The reason being, say, if I just imagine this room, if the room contains, say, for example, multiple windows that they are exposed to the solar radiation, and it can be conduction in the the walls, convection in the air, so all those sort of things. So it's not like very straightforward when we use an equation. Of course, that will be an approximate equation which we can solve and get an idea. Um, but if we want more realistic, and if you want to compare that analytical model with some experimental value, what do you do? Where, but what we can do is we can put multiple thermal sensors. We can put thermocouples for temperature, but we can put to measure images. We can get camera to get, like, nowadays what people do, say for example, in the biomedical sector, we have loads of images, we have signals, all those sort of things. So we have data. It's easy to get data. We all carry smartphone nowadays, right? So smartphones all have multiple sensors. It has accelerometer. If you access the accelerometer in the smartphone and start running, then it will give you the acceleration. So that sort of things. Now what happens is, if we switch this output and program, because if we don't have the program, if we do not have the numerical method or the equation, then if we have the sensor, we have the output data. So we have the left hand side now becomes data and output, where the output is essentially any sensor data. For experiments, it can be a pressure flow, fluid flow, velocity. It can be images. It can be accelerometer from our smartphone. It can be any kind of data. So we get that output. And now we use the computer not to predict the output, but to see whether there is any trend between this data and the output. So and then we build a program so that we can predict certain things. So this is the entire, in a nutshell, concept behind artificial intelligence, where we use the computer again, but not for getting the output, but to find out the underlying program that is kind of governing this data and output, the input and output. In artificial intelligence terminology, it's not always called program. It's called model most of the time. So that's how we create the model. Now, looking into this, there are multiple. So the bigger, there are multiple aspects to it. The bigger picture, the big box here is the artificial intelligence, and there are things like machine learning, deep learning, all subsets of it. And then there are other things as well. Reinforcement learning, signal processing, image processing is always there. We do general adversarial networks. So that is also part of AI. Predictive maintenance is a classic example of machine learning, deep learning in the industry, in the manufacturing world as well. Um, Now, say for example, where do we use these things? We use it like everywhere, because if you think about it, it is there in terms of a data. It just depends on the data, and every sector uses data. Speech recognition, if you think about Alexa or say Siri or all those type of now, to understand certain things, right? Yeah, so yeah, it would be good if you can mute yourself so that it doesn't create any problem. I was just looking into the chat window. There is something, somebody saying black screen. I hope that is resolved
No, sir, it is their problem. It is not your problem. We are getting the screen.
now, and resolved now. And you should be able to see the screen. If you cannot see the screen, just let it me know through the chat window.
No, sir, we are getting a
Okay,
screen. You can continue.
okay. Sure, no problem. Thank you. So that is the speech recognition part where you can use this. Sure, no problem. And then we have object recognition. Object recognition is used for a lot of things, right? Say, for example, if I mean, nowadays the drones are being used to see whether a person is wearing mask or not. That is a classic object recognition problem. I can show some examples on that as well. So uh, that is one area where it is becoming very useful. Engine health monitoring, it's not only engine health. Say for example, a bridge collapse type of a situation, we don't want bridges to collapse. It happened, right? It happened multiple times in different areas in our country as well. So if we can monitor whether there is wear and tear in any structure, whether the engine is going to fail, then we can predict that. And if we can predict that, we can take care of it beforehand. It's like, for any kind of healthcare applications, we do not want to go to the doctor when the problem has already occurred. If we can predict that there is a chance that this person can have a heart attack, then there are significant chances of saving the person as compared to when the heart attack has already happened. So this is another classic example of use of machine learning, where we can actually use data to predict whether a person can have any disease or not, and then take care beforehand. Like that, there are multiple other applications. I'm not going to the details of each of the things, but all these things are there. Um, okay. So there are differences on all these sectors in terms of how they're used. I mean, we'll come to the terminologies. There is something called classification, regression. So there are different ways how do we want to address this type of problem, and each one has its own challenges. Like if it's a taxi availability, what Uber or Ola uses, they also uses AI, artificial intelligence. So what they do is they have loads of data, but they need to play with that data. So that sort of things. Stock market is another, finance is another big sector, energy load forecasting, like say for example what will happen if there is a blackout, if those sort of things. So those things can also be, but each has its own challenges. Now let's come to specifically what machine learning is all about, where machine learning fits in. How does that compare with deep learning? We'll talk about, so that we kind of set the context for tomorrow as well. So in terms of terminologies, there are multiple things: supervised, unsupervised learning. I think you might have just gone through them during this program as well. Um, I'll come to those things as well. So what we will cover is basically what is machine learning, and we'll go through one example. How do we do that in MATLAB basically, and we'll go through multiple examples in MATLAB. And there are multiple things which we can do, like how to do the optimization, because as you have seen in the first, is probably the morning session today. Optimization is one parameter by which we need to find out certain hyperparameters. What can be a good way to do that? Search methods or any genetic algorithm time optimization, that sort of things can help. Um, so now what happens in machine learning is, if we remember that slide, what we talked about, we have data and we want to create a program. Let's just think of an example. The example is what we will show also is, say for example, if I use my phone, so this smartphone. So if we use this smartphone to monitor the acceleration, right? And once we have the monitor the acceleration, we want to predict whether a person is sitting, or a person is walking, or a person is walking upstairs, or it is standing or laying, that sort of thing. uh, Now, if you realize, like all the Fitbits that people use today, they do those kind of things. It kind of tracks the acceleration only, and that's what it does. So all our smartphones have that sensor anyway. So it's not like we need to use a Fitbit to always do that. You can create your own program and use accelerometer data. So if we think about simple, like a if else type of program, then what we can show is, we can say that if the acceleration is greater than 0.55, then sitting. If y acceleration is between 4 and 5, then standing. We can do that kind of an if else statement. But then there will be a loads and loads of if else statements that we need to put in, because there can be combination of things as well. And we do not want to just use on the data we have. We want to just make it a universal thing, so that if I create the app today, and then somebody in a different country uses the same app based on the sensor of the phone, then that person should be able to use it. So we want to make it independent of the platform and the data it has, which basically means whatever algorithm we develop, that should not be only dependent on the algorithm, the data that is it is used to train. As So training is basically one important step what we need to do, create this algorithm. um, so that's one of the things that we will try to do. So basically, uh, if we know the acceleration, if we want to summarize, if we know the acceleration, we want to predict whether the person is walking, or walking upstairs, or sitting, or standing, or laying, or sleeping. uh, so what do we want to do? Essentially, we want to have data, and then we want to train that the data with some algorithm, so that we create that algorithm. So that once we give any random number to it, random acceleration, it knows what we are doing. So we create the algorithm today, and then say, after the lockdown, if somebody is, say for example, running around in a different country or a different state, then that app should also show whether the person is running or walking, or if running, then what speed it is running. So that sort of things. So that program will be essentially that as a thing. Now, the concept that came up here is training. Now, what is this training? Entire concept of training. If we think about artificial intelligence, it's not like some sci-fi movie. It is based on the data that we collect. It's based on data that we use to train the program. So essentially, training is the integral part of it. If we want, there is a good saying that if the garbage in is garbage out, So if we train our data with some garbage data, then the model will develop is also garbage. So basically, we need to make sure that we train with correct data. As an example, which we can point out here. So, for example, when I joined MathWorks around 2 years back, I had a colleague. So, what she mentioned is, "Are you from eastern part of India?" Now, the thing is, how does she realize whether I'm from which region? Basically, what she did is she knew some people from eastern part of India, and then what she realized is there is a typical walking posture apparently, and then she is just using that walking posture to try on the model that she has developed in her head on me. But she has developed the model based on 5 people and then testing on me, right? But that is, I mean, coincidentally it worked out right, but that is not always the case. If we just train a model by 5 data, it's not like we'll get the right answer always. But that is how the point here is, that is how we human work. We try to trend our model, our mind, with some data that we have. We might have seen like some people have a specific accent from some part of the world. So in that way, then we generalize that this people from this area has this accent, which is, I mean, that is how we train our mind, because we have trained our mind on that data set. And that is what typically all this algorithm does. When we train them, we try to find out what is the connection between all this data, what is kind of underlying them, and then we develop this model which can be used for future prediction. So that is the classical approach. That is what we want to do in all this type of things. Um, okay. So moving ahead, the way we kind of proceed with this entire machine learning workflow, if we will, is first of all we need data. So we can get data from different areas. It can be images. If we take data from camera, it can be signal data. Say our example, as we talk about, it is the sensor data from our phone. So we can get data from there. If we can get that sort of sensor data, or we can get like thermal sensor to get temperature, we can get force sensor to get force. So any kind of data we can get. And then there are multiple ways to handle that data. We'll talk about that as well. That second step is pre-processing that data, which means like it can be simple. Just find out what is the outlier. You might just want to get rid of the outliers. That can be a pre-processing step. Um, and then another aspect of it is finding out the features. So features means, as it shows in this example, say for example, if I have a tea cup or a coffee mug, and I want to I want an algorithm that will that will kind of identify that this is actually the coffee mug. Then it has to find out what are the features that make it a coffee cup. It can have that cylindrical structure. It can have a handle. So those sort of things are features. Uh, so we have to find out those features, or we have to use something else to find out the features. I mean, that is an integral part as well. Uh, so any kind of statistics is basically those features. Now, if you think about the statistics, like simple statistics, like finding out a mean, standard deviation, or a quartile deviation, those are also features, because those are characteristics of the data. Those characteristics of the data comes in this pre-processing steps, finding out that thing. The next part is developing the model. So where we use the data and the features that we have extracted, so we use them to create the model. um, so that model that we want to use for our testing or validation or those type of steps, we'll talk about those in a while as well. So basically the model that can be used for any prediction. So developing that model is the third step, and the fourth step is basically putting it onto the for somebody's use. It can be putting onto the hardware. Like say for example that what we mentioned, like if we develop an app that can do a Fitbit type of thing, then that model needs to fit into a Fitbit. Like if there is a hardware, if say for example Apple comes with an Apple watch, right? So we have to create an algorithm that can fit into the Apple watch. So that means that Apple watch will have a chip, a board, and that algorithm that we develop should go into that hardware. We do not want to just limit ourselves into the software environment. So what we do is we create the from the software, from the simulation, from the computer program, we directly put whatever we deploy on the hardware, whatever we develop on the hardware. So that's what we do in MATLAB. So we can generate say C code, we can generate C++ code, We can generate code for specific hardware, like if Intel or Nvidia, those are the people who make those chips. So what we do is we have collaborations with them, so that what we do as a software in this platform, we can develop the hardware, a specific code from there in a button of a click, or rather click of a button, sorry. So we click a button, and then the software is developed. The software we developed will create the code required for that hardware. Or not even the hardware, if we want to create an app, we can just create an app for an Android and put it on our phone, so that that phone can does it. So we can create that sort of things as well. So these are the four steps that we talk about in an entire machine learning workflow. And when industries use machine learning or deep learning, they want to cover all these entire four steps. In academia, we can go into depth of each of these steps as well. Because if we look into any of these steps, these are big projects. This is a big problem. So we can go into big depth of any of these steps. Also, we can create all those steps so that if there is a chance, but that's how people create the startup type companies, because then we need to create the entire end-to-end workflow, which we call it. Um, okay. So now what we will do is, how do we cover these all these steps using MATLAB in terms of the technical workflow that we talk about in this entire workflow? That's what we will talk about. And then this workflow that I talked about in this slide is true for both machine learning and deep learning. Okay. So now the difference between machine learning and deep learning come into the picture, where is primarily in machine learning, we do the feature extraction part and we create the machine learning model. So that means we need to know, if we have a signal, like a time varying signal, we need to know what type of features we need to extract. We need to have that domain knowledge. Somebody needs to know about like how to work with frequency, how to work with time, that sort of things, if we have to do any kind of manual feature extraction. So the manual, there are multiple other differences, but this is a, I mean, in a nutshell, the basic difference as well. So we need to find out the features in machine learning, and then we create the model. In deep learning, we pass all these data through something called network, which we will come across tomorrow. And that's where the features are learned through those networks. I am not going to any detail of the networks today, and then the model is developed. So that is the basic difference. So if we have to do this classification type of task, classification means what it means in English, basically classifying certain things. So if there is an object recognition type of algorithm we have developed, and by a camera we see whether what is that image, so whether that is a car or a truck or a bicycle. We can have a drone to find out whether it's a car or a truck and bicycle. We can make it further classification, like in what image are, like for the home ministry regulation, what has come up for COVID-19, right? There can be two people in a vehicle, so we can classify whether a vehicle contains two-person or not based on images. So that is something called classification, where we basically figure out it is either this or this or this. It can be just simple true or false. Like the hurt. If you want to classify whether a hurt is faulty or not, that is a classification. Whether we get this hurt signal, like a ECG data, say for example, and from there, based on the ECG data, we can figure out whether the person has a faulty hurt or a normal hurt. That is a classification. Whether that drone identifies that object, whether that object contains car with two-person or four-person, that is a classification problem. When we get acceleration data from the phone, whether the person is sitting or walking or running or sleeping, that is a classification problem. So if we find out the features from the data and train the algorithm, that is machine learning. If we pass all this data through a network, so to say, to do all these things, then it is deep learning. Okay. A typical question that comes up is, when do we use machine learning and when do we use deep learning? We'll go into this tomorrow as well. Um, in a overview, there are variations to this. This is like a summary in general what we have. So machine learning, since we are finding out the features, then we can deal with a less data set. If we do not have a very high data set, we can deal with in machine learning. But deep learning, we need a bigger data set. So the computing power needs to be high for deep learning, and also we need to make sure we have enough data for deep learning. If we have a small data set, we can go do with machine learning, and we have to choose our own features. That means we need to know what can be a good feature. like say for example, when we'll do today, we'll do with signals. So for signal analysis, we need to know how to play with signals so that we can actually find out what are the features. Okay. Um, in terms of theory, there are two types of machine learning. One is called supervised and unsupervised learning. I'm not going to the detail. I hope these things will are covered essentially in different talks as well, and also there in multiple books as well. So supervised is basically, if we go one more step, there are two steps to it: regression and classification. So regression is a problem where we're trying to say, if we want to find out the weather temperature for tomorrow, so it's like a regression problem where we want to compute something. Classification we already talked about, it's classify whether this or that. So that is, those are parts of supervised learning. Unsupervised learning is whether when we do not have a label data set, which means we do not have, okay, so these are heard sounds, these are ECG data which is normal patient, like a normal person, and these are ECG data for abnormal patient, which we know beforehand before creating the model. But for unsupervised, we do not know beforehand. um, like say for example, what we will do today, from the phone we will take data from acceleration. So for that acceleration data, we know beforehand the label data set. That means we know beforehand what acceleration corresponds to walking, what acceleration corresponds to sleeping, that sort of things. If we do not have that beforehand, then we go to something called unsupervised learning, which leads to a step called clustering. So these are all the basic things of machine learning which we need to cover. Okay, so we'll start with classification essentially. Now, if we remember that entire four-step workflow, we have data first of all. Once we have data, what we do is we pre-process the data, which means we can find out statistics of the summary. I mean, summary of the statistics, which means like mean, standard deviation, that sort of things, or it can be other features, or it can be removing the outliers. So that sort of things is in the step of pre-processing step, and then we do a classification problem where we find out the model. So this we do for the training step. And after we are done with the training step, we need to use it for prediction purpose. Otherwise, it is of no use, right? If you cannot use for any prediction purpose, then the training doesn't. I mean, that is the entire thing. That's the entire go-to thing what we need to do. So for prediction, what we need to do is we have a new data set where we want to use our model. And then what we'll do is we'll use a pre-processing step from the training step. And then what we do is we use the model that we have created. And using the model and the pre-processing step on the new data set, we do our prediction purpose. Okay, so that is the workflow. Uh, so we'll go over this problem now. This problem is basically when we have a human activity recognition, which means that we have data set from the phone, which is of acceleration of different person. When a person is sitting versus walking upstairs versus walking versus standing versus just laying down. How do we can get the data? If you do not have the get data, by the way, there are multiple ways to get the data. I'll just talk about that. At this point, we'll basically switch over to MATLAB. So our goal is essentially this. We want to create this model which will, by using data from our phone, find out what we are doing. Um, so now, say for example, if I switch over to MATLAB, uh, in this MATLAB, so this is the MATLAB window. Um, I just want to make so if anybody has MATLAB installed, you can also go for say for example in the documentation. If I search for human activity, so documentation basically in MATLAB, this is the window where you can search for anything and everything will come up. It's a pretty rich documentation. So human activity recognition. So this, so basically the data set is already installed in the MATLAB. So you can go through the documentation. I'm not going to go through. It's a little difference as well, which we are talking about. This is on Simulink. I'm not going to talk about Simulink today. So say for example, if I say load human activity, we see that the data set already gets installed. Just in terms of the MATLAB environment here, what we have is this is called the command window where we basically write anything. So A equal to 2, say C equal to 3, these sort of things. And any variable gets saved in this workspace. Um, so if you just once you have MATLAB installed, like a 2018 version or more than that, so if you just see load human activity, then the activity will come up. I mean, this entire data set will come up. If you do not have that, what you can do is also there is something called MATLAB Mobile. So basically, if you go to your Apple, where you download the app, or if you go to even for this Google Play Store, and then you can download something called MATLAB Mobile. Once you download MATLAB Mobile, what happens is um, it accesses the accelerometer data, accelerometer of the phone. um, Essentially, once we create a MathWorks ID, you need to, I'll talk about those things later on. So once we create the MathWorks ID, anybody can create the MathWorks ID, by the way. So once you create the MathWorks ID, you get access to multiple courses as well. And depending on the certain license, like in India now we have something called campus wide license, which we talk about, which means like every person in the institute, faculties, research scholars, students have everything about MATLAB. So MATLAB online, because we can do, like in this kind of situation, we also do something called MATLAB online, which means like running MATLAB on the browser. So this is like if you do not have a MATLAB installed in the system, and it does not use any computing power of the local computer. We have tie-ups with say Amazon Web Service and things like Microsoft Azure, and from there we use this computing power. So this thing entirely runs in the browser, and this correlates with MATLAB Mobile. So if we take the data from MATLAB Mobile, it will directly go to your MATLAB Drive, which is like a Dropbox for MATLAB. And then that's how we can get the data as well. Okay, so that's how we get the data. Um, I'll go to, and this is where we navigate the folder where I have everything saved. Because as you know, for MATLAB, we need to go to the right folder. Otherwise, it will give you error. Right folder means from where you can find out the data, so that we can access the data essentially. Okay, so I go to the right folder, and I'm just opening up the right file. So now, say for example, this is something called a MATLAB Live Editor. So you can, in general, so from this MATLAB window, if I go to this home, there's something called new script, there's something called new live script. So new script saves as .m file, new live script saves as .mlx file. The advantage of new live script is this sort of things, where what is happening is, yeah, let me just also see if there are any questions at this point of time. Before we essentially start off with MATLAB, if there are any question, okay, I see there is,
Yeah, sir. Dr. Sujit Kumar has one question. Sujit Kumar.
yes, sir. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, do you want to voice out, or is it there here, the question?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. My question is that you told that human activity is there. Is it available in the higher versions of MATLAB only?
Yes, it is available from 18 onwards.
18 onwards. And what about MATLAB mobile?
MATLAB Mobile is there. I mean, it doesn't depend on any version. You can just download from the phone. I'll share the link actually here in this chat window, so that you can find out details. MATLAB Mobile, I mean, it doesn't depend on the version. You will get access to the highest version. But it also depends a little bit on the license agreement with the college. So if somebody has campus-wide license, which we have with most of the institutes now, then all these things are there. But also it depends on, like, if you have a valid license from MATLAB, then it will use. If you go to this link, then this link will take you to more of MATLAB online, MATLAB mobile. So I've put in the chat window as well.
I already have that MATLAB mobile in my phone.
Okay,
And
okay.
but can you can you tell the how to take the load the data from that you're talking about acceleration data?
Oh, so if you essentially, if you want to do it from MATLAB window, so MATLAB window, we can say, I'll just clear everything. You can first of all just try this load human activity. I'm not sure which exact version from where it has. So if you see a load of human activity, if you just write in the MATLAB command window and this data comes up and it does not give you an error, then it is there. Or you can also search in the doc. Like if I search doc human activity, and then it will take you all the details in the documentation. So this is the documentation which contains all the detail of how you can get the data. So that's how we can get the data. And also, if you want to record from the phone, then what we have to do is you have to stream the data. So if you open up MATLAB Mobile, there is an option where you can stream the data. So if you just click on stream the data, then what happens is I'll just open up MATLAB Online. So in MATLAB Online, what happens is the local folder is something called MATLAB Drive. So if I open up MATLAB Online, and MATLAB Mobile and MATLAB Online both access the same folder, which means, so if you see here, there's something called MATLAB Drive. So MATLAB Drive is kind of a Dropbox. So it's shared in the cloud. So it's not like in your local system. It's like a Google Drives type thing. So everybody who has a MathWorks account has access to 5 GB of data in MATLAB Drive. So if you stream the data, that data will automatically get saved in your MATLAB Drive. So this is like, so for example, what I did is this one. So like this, you will get it saved in your like the sensor log. So this data from MATLAB Online, MATLAB Mobile will get saved to MATLAB Drive. Now you can get MATLAB Drive data. You can access MATLAB Drive data from here like this. And also you can download something called MATLAB Drive Connector. And then what happens is I'll show you this folder comes in, which is, so this folder is a MATLAB Drive in my local system. And this gets synced with the MATLAB Drive. So this is the same folder. It's like a local MATLAB Drive, which is synced with this cloud MATLAB Drive. They're the same thing, but it's good for, accessing the data when you have when you have it in your folder. So that is how you can get the data from MATLAB Online. There is one more question here on PCA. So PCA is a pre-processing step. You're right. So we'll talk about actually this when we go through the steps. So just hold on for this for the moment. We'll do PCA as well when we go to the hands-on kind of example. And then there was another question on deep learning. Let's keep deep learning for tomorrow because we won't go into deep learning today. So let's just go for the but yes, MATLAB Online can be used for deep learning. So if you have MATLAB Online, you can do machine learning, deep learning, everything to do that. Is license number needed to run MATLAB Online? Just try if MATLAB Online is working. If not, please reach out to us. I don't know. It's not like a license number so to say, but the way it works is it needs to have any valid license. So it's when you create the MathWorks ID, it attaches the MathWorks ID to that valid license. So once you create the MathWorks ID,
Sir,
you can just start MATLAB Online. Yes. Yes, sir.
Sir, one more that take the data from the acceleration. How can we take the data from the
From acceleration?
the
That's what
acceleration you're talking?
Yeah, so that's what, if you have a MATLAB Online in your phone, MATLAB Mobile in your phone, you can directly stream the data. So there is an option called stream data. So if you download MATLAB Mobile and then if you stream the data, and you just run around with the phone. So basically you record the data and the data gets stored in your MATLAB Drive. And that MATLAB Drive can be accessed from your local system, from MATLAB Online, from anywhere. And also, if you have a
Okay.
MATLAB installed, just try out load human activity. You can just write load human activity. Because with the installation, we have already put the data inside as a help file. So that data is already there when you install MATLAB. So if you have a MATLAB which is 2018, 2018A, B, 19, now we are using 2020A. So all of those are contain this data set anyway. So you don't have to download the data from the very beginning. Okay. So regarding the hold off on the question, yes, thank you. On the questions on PCA, we'll come to those later on. Okay. So now in LiveScript, what is happening is we can give this kind of a text. So you can think it out to be like a MATLAB, like a Microsoft Word document where you have MATLAB coding. And say, for example, if you go to save, it says that we can export as PDF. So you can export this as a PDF, which will contain. I mean, I can share these files also later on. So don't worry about the MATLAB scripts. I can share with Dr. Dave, and then he can share with everybody these files as well, both with the presentation and this MATLAB file. So
Shavik,
yes,
sorry, this is Ashish. I've shared a link for Google Form. If all the faculty members can fill that, I will be personally sending all the details, whatever they need. So I can do that.
So,
thanks, Ashish. Yeah,
uh,
Yeah.
so,
yeah, it'd be good if you can then fill up form.
so
That'd be nice, and
where
we
is
can
that
share
form,
this.
sir? Dr. Chatterjee, can you ask Ashish where the form is?
I, Sir, I've just put that in the a Google a document in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem, sir.
Yep. So now if we look into this live script, we have, so this is like a heading, right? And then we have text, and then we have put this image. So you can put all these things in a live script. If you have used previous versions of MATLAB, there are the something called percentage, which are basically comments, which we have here as well. But along with that, we can do these sort of things, because then it makes more interactive, and it helps more description, because it is not easy to find out, understands people's code. Like we also, once we write a code, if we come back to it 1 month later, we cannot find out what is there. So it's good to have a good description, and that's what it contains. You can put hyperlinks and stuff like that. So what we will do is, so we have the data, so this is our data. So now we will do it like section by section. And what by that means is, by this button here, section break, that means we can break the section here and then go to a next section. So how it helps is, we can run only one section and see how it looks like. Okay, so we get the section, I'm just running this section, so we get this raw sensor data. After that, so this raw sensor data, what does it has? So it has something called acceleration of x, y, and z axis. There can be gyroscope data as well if you use the sensors in your phone, but now let's keep it for simple. We'll just using the acceleration data as in x, y, and z. And this is for training, right? So that means we know the labels, we know what it means, and we call it the training activity. So if you look into the plot on the right, it tells us that this plot contains, acceleration x is the top one, acceleration y is the middle one, and acceleration z is the bottom one. So these are all acceleration with time plot. So these are time data, right? So temperature, temporal graphs, how things vary with time. And we have labeled them by color, which means the blue is walking, red is walking upstairs, orange is walking downstairs, violet is sitting, and then purple is standing, and blue is laying. So laying definitely doesn't have acceleration due to gravity, right? So that's why the blue is, in a zero thing. But all the others, when the person is um, like standing, the acceleration due to gravity is there. So we have close to something 10, because the accelerometer gives a 10 value, which is 9.8, right? So this is the data. That's how we get the data. So the first step of getting the data. Some of the things I want to highlight here. So this data only contains numbers, right? But you might have data which contains, say, for example, images. You can have data which contains text. So there are different ways to read those data. In MATLAB, there are multiple different ways. If you are facing problems with something like out of memory, then there is something called data store. So the data store is something we have created to handle data of high volume in a memory efficient way. So we can take care of any kind of like, Excel has certain limits in terms of data, right? But here we do not have as such limits, because we can just read data from any server, from any type of images, using something called data store. So you can always Google data store. For images, there is something called image data store. For audio, it's called audio data store. So like this, just Google data store if you are playing with very high volume of data. Okay, so once we have the data, as you know, MATLAB is a high level language, which means it has languages for multiple things that, that makes us simpler. Say, for example, table is a command, it's an inbuilt command. There are inbuilt commands for doing certain specific tasks. So if you say table, it will just put everything in a table format. And then we put the data. Okay, when we go to the next step, is basically about finding out the features. where we find out what type of features we can get from this data. As we have seen, this is a time dependent data, right? If we have time, I'll go to some more of features later on. But now for our purpose, we are specifying ourselves to three features. One is finding out a mean, because this data is varying with time, right? So definitely it's a time dependent data. So we can find out something called something as a mean. So mean is one data, one feature. Standard deviation is one more, and then PCA. Somebody mentioned PCA. So PCA is another feature that we are extracting. PCA means principal component analysis, which means like once you have data in different forms, we can make it into um, in two or three principal components. So basically, say for example, it means that we are breaking the data into orthogonal directions. So if you make it into two orthogonal directions, it's a feature reduction technique, because we kind of want to get everything concised in one feature, and that is principal component. In MATLAB, we have inbuilt command to find out the principal components, which we can do to find out this data. So that's how what we do here, and then we just put them in one matrix. So this is that matrix. So in one matrix, we are putting all our features, which is T mean, T standard deviation, and T PCA. We're just naming it as variables. Uh, I'm not going to any details of how do we create matrices and those things. If you want any detail, I'll talk about resources later on. And we all do webinars on specific domains like how to create matrices and those things. So if you want any of those, feel free to reach out to us. Both Ashish and I can be able to help you to guide you to the um, right webinars for any of these specific things. Okay, so that's how we get the data. So this is, we get the data and we find out the features. Now what do we do? Our next step is finding out that algorithm. How do we find out that algorithm? How do we find out that model which works best? So for doing that, what we'll go to is, if I go to MATLAB and if you go to apps, so apps are a thing in MATLAB where basically, so as what we have been doing here is we have been writing scripts. I mean, there are multiple functions to make things easy, but still we are writing scripts. Apps are a way by which we can get rid of the writing script and do processing in a user-friendly way, in a graphical user interface environment. So we do things in a graphical user interface through these apps, and then the code can be automatically generated. The code can be a MATLAB code. So if you use this MATLAB coder app, then whatever you do in MATLAB, you can generate the equivalent C or C++ code automatically. Because C or C++ code has multiple other dependency files. It has multiple steps in between. So MATLAB contains the functions for engineering or scientific things, right? So that you can do, and then automatically we can create the C or C++ code using MATLAB coder. Like this, there are multiple other apps. We are not going into details. You can go through them. Most of them are there in the online environment as well. So if I scroll down, there is something called a machine learning and deep learning. By the way, you can create your own apps as well. That is also easy. You can use this design app segment to find to create your own apps. So if you go to machine learning and deep learning, there is something called classification learner, deep network designer, which we'll go through tomorrow. But for now, we can open this classification learner app. So if we open this classification learner app, this window comes up. Now, what is this window? So if I go to new session and go from workspace, so in our workspace now, I have this human activity data. So I'm just extracting that data. So if you look into this window now, it contains some of the response and then the predictors. So response means what we are trying to find out, which is the activity. So activity is categorical. Categorical means these are like the thing what we want to do. In our, those categories are whether the person is walking, whether the person is walking upstairs, whether it's walking downstairs, whether it's sitting, whether it's laying down or standing. So those are the six categories. And what is that category dependent on? All these data. So acceleration in X direction, acceleration in Y direction, Z direction, gyroscope data, standard deviation, and these sort of things. And the things that we measured is basically, if you look, scroll down here. So we have mean, we have standard deviation here, and we have the PCA score. So these are the features that we are extracting. So we have all those data from the table format that we have created, loaded in this app. On the right, what we have is three types of validation. Now, validation is an important step in our entire machine learning or deep learning workflow. Now, what does that mean? Um, Imagine uh, there is we can let's imagine through there are three sets of data here. One is training, one is validating, and one is testing. Okay. Now, what is the difference between all these three things? Uh, we can take an example of, say, for example, a semester question paper, so to say. Um, say a student is trained on certain problems, right? Um, and then we give assignments to the problem to the student. The assignments are sort of a validation, which means um, we want to see whether the person has learned the things in the class. So if a problem is described in class, the assignment problem is not always the same as the problem that is done in class, because it's a little different. It can be that the parameters are changed, it can be a little different in terms of language. So that can be a validation set. And then the testing set is the set which comes in the exam, right? Which is a completely different set, because when we are setting example question papers, we do not want to give the same problem. Say, for example, if a faculty does not want to give the same problem as done in class, because it is a new problem that the student is facing during exam. Whereas for validation, what we can give is we can give the same problem but with different parameters, just changing the parameters. So say a faculty does a simple problem in class, one problem, and for assignment, he gives the same problem but with different parameter. And for test, it gives us some completely new problem. So this is kind of equivalent to what we are doing here. So if we train our data set, and then for the training data set, so we use this training data set. The testing data set is something that comes in the exam, and that is completely different. That means this algorithm has not seen the testing data set ever before. But the validation data set is something that it has seen before. Okay, there are two ways of validation that we can do. No validation, of course, we can get rid of validation. It's okay that if we do not do validation. But then if we do not do validation, then when a new testing segment comes up, a new problem comes up in the test, a student might find it difficult. And that is what this algorithm also finds it difficult. If we do not do any validation, then once it finds a new data set completely which has not seen the training set, then there are chances that there can be error. If coincidentally the data set is same as the training data set, it will turn out good, but that is not always the case. Like, say, for example, if that this accelerometer data set, if we do not train with a person who is doing this exercises in, say, Netherlands, and then if we give this app to them, it's a completely new data set. But we can do some kinds of validation, which means holdout validation is once we have the training data set, um, we use set if we use 25% for validation, that means it will keep 25% for validation out of the training data set. Now, if we do not have a good amount of data set, then what we use something called cross validation, which means say, for example, I have 100 data. Okay, and then if we do something called cross validation with 5 folds, that means we will divide this 100 data into 5 sets. So 5 sets means 20 each. So we have 20 data set of 5 buckets. So you can think of 5 buckets, and then we have 20 data set each. Now what we do is we use one of them for validation. So we train the algorithm for the 4 buckets, and then we use one for validation. But then this one is also changing. So the first step, what we do is bucket number 1 is for validation, and the next 4 are for training. The next iteration, what we do is we use bucket number 2 for validation, and 1, 3, 4, and 5 for training. And like this, we continue such that each of the buckets has served as a validation set at least once. So that is what happens in the cross validation step. So if you choose the one what we want, you can choose what you want to do.
Dr. Chatterjee,
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Chatterjee,
Yes, sir.
I have one question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
You said that in the validation, the training data are being used. Are training data are modified or in same form they are being used?
So that is, I mean, it depends on how we can modify them, which is kind of something called augmentation. If we do not do the augmentation part, it can be the same data set that we are using. So it depends on how we want to use it. Both options are there.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you, thank you.
One more, sir, I have one question. Hello.
yes.
Sir, you told about the validation or cross validation
Uh,
for 5. What is the beneficial that it will be if you increase the number of folds?
Oh, yeah, I mean, so then if you increase the number of folds now, typically, if we look back and see when do we use cross validation, we use cross validation in general when we do not have a good enough, like a large enough data set. So if you have like a huge data set, then what happens is you essentially can keep some data for validation. But if we do not have a huge data set, then we can use this, because this is like whatever we have in our repository, we are just using shuffling them. So if we use more number of folds or more number of buckets, then what happens is each bucket contains less data. So it is a optimization step where we need to figure out the exact number of buckets. Like if you have only 2 data set or 3 data set per bucket per fold, then it won't give anything. So we have to use that number of data in one bucket, which is good enough to go do an algorithm. So so that's how we need to figure out in number of folds. So if you have very less number of data, then you cannot have a very high number of folds. So it depends on that way, on the number of folds.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So now let's see what happens in this app. So we just first of all, we have just loaded the data. Ignore whatever is coming as this image. If you look into the classes, so classes means the labels, the way we have distinguished the classes. So we have walking, walking upstairs, walking downstairs, sitting, standing, laying. So all of them. And this graph is basically just plotting against one each other. It doesn't mean anything. It depends on video. So you can choose which one you want to plot against which one, and you can get this plot. Now, there are multiple different things here. Say, for example, you open up the data set, but we don't know which algorithm to use. How do we address that? So what we have here is we have all the type of machine learning algorithms inbuilt here. And if you want to use something specific, you can use your algorithm as well. We can load up custom algorithms, but the common ones are all loaded here. Say, for example, fine tree, medium tree, coarse tree, discriminant methods, naive Bayes, SVM, support vector machines, KNN, all those, they are classified in terms of which type of algorithms, and they're all loaded here. So if you have a publication from where you can find out what data works best for this type of data set, we can just use that type of algorithm. Say, for example, if I do not know which algorithm to use, so in that case, what we can do is, say, for example, I can choose all the linear algorithms. And then if I choose all the linear algorithms, what it will do, it will train on all the linear algorithms. Then there are a couple of things more here. There's something called use parallel. So use parallel means, so MATLAB by default uses one core of the laptop or the desktop you are using. If I use parallel, then it uses something called parallel computing toolbox. That means it automatically switches on the parallel pool and it uses all the cores in the machine. If you have a server, then it will use the server as well. It can run on Amazon Web Service, Microsoft Azure, that sort of clouds as well, or it can run in any cluster in the institute as well. So and also for now, I don't have access to all those clusters. If I use parallel, it will just shoot up all the cores. So my laptop is 4 core. It will use all the 4 cores. If I disable them for now, just because of the sake of time, and then if I use, say, train, if you click on train, then see what happens. Here we see that this is training. So it will train on all the algorithms you want. And then if I want to use another algorithm, I can train here as well. And it will give you the accuracy here. Accuracy is based on the validation we have chosen. And then like this, it comes. So for example, now if I want to see how it does on tree, so I can choose tree and then train. So it will train the algorithm on train the model on the algorithm you choose. So now see, if you see here, tree gives the highest accuracy. The rest, compared to these two, linear discriminant and SVM, tree gives the highest accuracy. Um, Now, if you go to confusion matrix, so if I just click on confusion matrix, then we see this kind of a plot. Now, what does this plot mean? This plot is a kind of a visualization way to figure out where we have done good and where we have done wrong. In short, the blue means good, and this red type means bad. The diagonal elements are good. That means in x-axis we have predicted class, and in y-axis we have true class. So when the true class and the predicted class are matching, then we have the diagonal elements. So say for example, if you imagine, if you look into laying, so the true class is laying, and the predicted class is also laying, and then we have almost 100% accuracy. If you want to see percentage wise, you can click on the next one here, and then we see in percentage wise. So 100% laying, and then we have most error in the walking upstairs and walking downstairs category. If we would do interactive sessions, definitely we can have more. We would have done interactions in a physical world, but now I'll just mention. So the reason for that is definitely, in walking and walking upstairs and walking downstairs, it's similar, because when you are sitting or standing or laying, definitely we do not have the walking type of signal. So these three are in a kind of similar type of signals, and the bottom three are again similar type of signals. So that's why we have more error in the walking versus walking upstairs versus walking downstairs category. And this three does not have too much of error. And then there are multiple ways where we can improve accuracy. We'll talk about those as well. Um, so that's how we get a visualization aspect of what we have come up with. So what we have done is we have loaded the data, and then we have found out three features for now: mean, standard deviation, and the last one was PCA, principal component analysis. And then we use the classification learner app to train our model based on the algorithm. I didn't know which one will work best. I knew that trees work good for signal analysis, so just we can choose all type of algorithms, and then we can see which one has a better accuracy. And then you can use parallel servers and parallel computing to make things easier. Okay, so after we are done with, yes, sir.
I have doubt, sir. These are the percentages getting the errors. Okay. So can we modify data itself? That means in the pre-processing data also. Can we improve this?
Yes, there are different ways to do that. We'll actually come to those things. So in the signal processing way, we might figure out that these are not always the good data set. We might, because this is a time dependent signal, right? So we have to go to the feature processing step and then go for not the Excel, because I mean in the Excel we might add certain data. But say for example, if I have to go to the spectral domain and find out the maximum frequency involved, so that sort of things is in the pre-processing step. So we have to go to the pre-processing step. That's that you are correct, to improve the accuracy, because we have to find out that whether the features we have taken are good or not. So for that, one crucial step is basically going back to the pre-processing step, and then say for example finding out a different parameter, different feature, which can be like, say for example, if we have to take the data to a spectral domain and find out what are the frequencies involved. Because anytime you have a time domain data, you might need to go to the spectral domain to find out the dominant frequency. So that can be a good feature, better feature, which can give better accuracy. So that definitely needs to be done in the pre-processing step. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Any other? There is a question here which we see inside every want to augment. Yes, if we want to augment the data set, there are commands in MATLAB. We'll come to those things, which is basically augment data store, and then we can say rotate the data set. We can kind of do multiple things of augmentation. So we can do definitely augmenting the data set.
Sir, one more question is there apart from this MATLAB. Just I just need that 20 MATLAB 2020. How much the memory required for this? The processing of your this RAM.
So it depends. It depends on the application. Because the reason I'm saying is MATLAB also has multiple, like Simulink. Simulink is something that uses more computation power. But if you're not using Simulink, so we recommend like a 8 GB minimum RAM for use of Simulink. If you're not using Simulink, then I mean less than 8 GB is also fine. Simulink is for control design and also for big simulations of systems. But for these things, it's not like that. I mean, for data processing, it's a different story, because if you have to train the data, then GPUs are advisable. But if you want to use MATLAB 2020 for other applications, then it's not like you need every like a very high. So 4 to 8 GB should be good enough. But it depends on the application. We can talk offline. You can reach out to us, and then based on the application, we can see which is the best platform.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you, sir.
thank you. Okay, so once we are done with this, now what do we do with that? So if you go to this export option, in this export option, there are multiple things. There's something called generate function. So if I click on generate function, what happens is it's automatically generates the MATLAB code. So whatever we have done, like classic tree, we have done tree, right? So whatever we did in that GUI, in that graphical user interface, the MATLAB code, equivalent MATLAB code will be automatically generated. So that is what happens um, when we create export and then generate function. When we create export model and then say export compact model, and if I click on OK, what happens is this model gets transferred to the MATLAB workspace. So I'll go to this, sorry, let me go to this MATLAB workspace. So it says that the trained model has come up here. So the trained model, basically it comes up as a structure. So if I go into this model, you can see this content. This is the function, the variables, and contains all the details. So it exports it as a model. It's not like a variable or something, but all the details of the algorithm of the model that we have created is here. And now we can just call this function for our texting purposes. So I'll go to that part. Okay. So this is the place where we, and of course, this is a good place to get started. There are multiple different things, as somebody mentioned about using pre-processing step to refine the data. That is one step where we can improve the accuracy. We can do Bayesian optimize, like different kinds of hyperparameter tuning, augmentation. So these are all the steps that needs to be done for improving the accuracy. But this is a step to get started. I haven't got into any of those details. This is mostly like how do you get started. So this is the model that we have just exported. For now, I'm not doing the training, because if I do training, it will take an hour or so. There's no point of wasting that time here. Okay, so now we have created the model. Now, if we want to use this model for testing purposes, what will we do? We just load the testing data set. So testing data set means this data set has not seen the model yet. The model that we have created using our training data set, which is so if you think of three buckets, so we had training, validation. So training and validation were together in one bucket, and we use that to create the model. And then we have a completely separate bucket that is saved for testing. So now we will just pass on random data to this model and see how it is doing. So what we will do is, first of all, we again create the table. So we have to do the same pre-processing step. So from that new data set, we find out the mean, standard deviation, and PCS score. Okay. So after that, we use the same model that we have used. So this is our model, trained modifier, trained classifier. This is the model that we have exported, and this is our testing model. Okay, and this predict is an inbuilt MATLAB function. So these are all inbuilt MATLAB functions which we are using. So we can use this MATLAB function predict to test the model, and then we visualize everything. Oops. In this confusion matrix again. So for the testing purpose, so this is the confusion matrix that we have created using the testing model. So testing model means, again, this data set has not seen the algorithm before. And we see an 80% accuracy here. Again, the blue means the correct ones, and the oranges means which are faulty ones. So we see it's mostly correct. We have around more than 60% accuracy for all the categories, for all the classes. But we have for walking upstairs and walking downstairs, we have a low accuracy, whereas the rest has a higher accuracy. So now we have to figure out what we can do to improve the accuracy. Of course, there are multiple things. I'll just mention one of the thing is optimizing hyperparameters. So how do we do optimizing hyperparameters? Again, there are multiple ways to do that in MATLAB. Um, Let me just show the app way. If you are using MATLAB, MATLAB 2019B or higher, so for all the trees, there is something called optimizable tree as well. So if I click on optimizable tree and then say, for example, click on training, this might take a little bit more time. What means that optimizable, what happens in the optimizable tree is basically, it uses error function to minimize. It does a grid, there can be different ways. It can be a grid search method, it can be a random search method, but essentially its goal is to optimize the hyperparameters. Now, what are hyperparameters? So in artificial intelligence world, or machine learning and deep learning world, there are different things. There is something called parameter and there is something called hyperparameters. So hyperparameters are things that we need to specify before the training. That can be like the epoch rate, it can be a learning, it can be the initial learning rate, it can be um, the epochs, which are all different types of terminologies, but those are the things that we define beforehand before we start the training procedure. Okay. So when we define all those things, we need to figure out what is the best set of those parameters that give us the best result. So if I go to this advanced option, and then there is something called optimizer options. From here, we can choose what type of optimization algorithm we want to run to optimize the hyperparameters. So Bayesian optimization is a probabilistic method for optimization. You can look up, there are multiple publications, Wikipedia page for what Bayesian optimization is. Grid search and random search are again two more optimization ways to find hyperparameter for hyperparameter tuning. So once we choose this option, optimizable, then there is a tree option and there is an optimization tree option. And then we see that we have increased the accuracy for 90, like 2 more percentage. And then we can specify some other things like how many iterations we want to do for the optimization and that sort of things. Um, so these are all things that we can specify here. So in MATLAB 2020A, we have this as in the app, but before that we had to write codes to do the optimization step. So this is what is happening here. We have using the optimization step. So we say optimize hyperparameters auto. So this is the step we need to write if we are not using the app environment. So this is for testing, and then for testing as well, if we use that, so we had a 80.62 percentage for testing, but if we use the hyperparameter and then do the testing, we increase the accuracy by 1% more. So like this, we can keep on going and see how we can increase the accuracy, and then choose different algorithms as well based on the need. One more thing there is before we close off this is specific for MATLAB 2020A, where there is a command called fit C auto. There is nothing, this is not there in the app environment as of now. It will come from MATLAB 2020B. Just in terms of resources, I want to mention that MATLAB comes up with 2 releases every year. There is a version and there is a B version. So now we are running 2020A. 2020B will come up in September. So I mean, it will come up every year twice, irrespective of lockdowns and everything. This will be there. So we have everything is finalized for 2020B as well. So that will come up. So what happened in 2020A is there is a command called fit C auto, which means it will. So if you have done numerical simulations in MATLAB, there are multiple commands for numerical simulations in MATLAB, like OD45, OD23. There is something called auto as well, which means it based on the problem, it finds out what is the best solver. Here also, based on the problem, using FitC Auto, it automatically finds out which machine learning algorithm to use and which optimization to use. I mean, it does based on how this model is developed. We have kind of trained, we have used machine learning to train this FitC Auto command basically. So FitC Auto, based on the data, it finds out which algorithm will work best and what type of optimization will work best. And then it will train the data based on that. So FitC Auto is a command to do that. And so that can also be used, but that is more of a, I mean, next step, next development sort of things, where what we do is automated machine learning. So we give the training data set to the automated machine learning using this automated machine learning command, and then it does all those aspects. Okay. So this is what we do for the entire classification process. This is the entire step. And the final thing what we can do is this code generation part. So code generation is after we are done with all these things, what we can do is we can create the C code for what we have done. Because as you know, many of the hardware, the Intel boards, they use C code. So we can create the C code by using this command. I mean, we can just use one command called um, code gen. So this code gen command is for generating the MATLAB equivalent C code for this. Or you can use the app. The app's name is, if you go to this app, it's called MATLAB Coder. So if we use MATLAB Coder, then it automatically generates the C code for whatever we do. Similarly, we can generate CUDA code for any NVIDIA boards. The app for that's name is GPU Coder. So you can use GPU Coder to generate that code. Then what happens is automatically the code will get generated. The C code will automatically get generated. I'll just show you how it looks like. Let me just go to the correct folder. So if you see in this folder, so if I do the code gen, then you will see the C code with all the C files, the header files, and all those things. So these things get automatically generated using this code gen command or using the MATLAB coder. Okay. So this is the entire workflow, how it works. I'll just briefly explain this part before we end. So this is what the one professor mentioned about using you going back to the pre-processing step. So going back to the pre-processing step is also crucial. I'll just mention one more app that helps there. So if I want to go back to the pre-processing step, and then we find out, say for example, if I see the raw data. So this is just going a step back, and then I want to do just signal processing. So if I just take the data for standing and then plot them, that is how it looks like. Similarly, if I plot for all the data, how it looks like is this. So if I'm just going back to the pre-processing step and then find out what is the difference. So if I look into the histograms, so we can just compare the histograms with a single command and see what happens. So we see that for walking and laying, so this rightmost figure, this show you data for walking versus laying. And we see that the histogram is middle for walking for 10, whereas for laying, the histogram is shifted towards the left, right? So that means if we just see the mean value for walking is 10, but the mean value for laying is around 2.5. So if we just filter out by mean, then we are done with separating laying. So we don't have to choose a machine learning algorithm to separate from laying versus walking. We are done here. But then if we look into walking and standing, then we see this plot. Then the histograms, if you look into walking versus standing, both has a mean of 10. And then if we just use the mean to separate, then we cannot separate these two data. For that case, if you look into walking versus walking upstairs, because even for walking and walking standing, if you look into this distribution, it is different. Because standing, it is all concentrated at 10. Here it is varying. Because it is walking, of course, it is varying. But if you compare between walking and walking upstairs, the histogram also looks same. So in that case, it becomes very difficult. How do you want to differentiate between walking and walking upstairs? So in that cases, amplitude and histograms might not be enough. In that cases, what do we do? That is one more question, and because in those cases we need to go to this pre-processing step and find out what we can do to figure out how we can find out more features. One thing we do for that is basically going to the signal analyzer step. What happens in the signal analyzer step is basically we can go to the something called the spectral domain. So for example, if we go to the signal analyzer and then filter out the signals by gravity, which is by just passing the signal through a filter of gravity, which is 10 meter per second square, and then we see that here it is the original signal has 10, some at 0, and then if we pass a filter for gravity, then everything just gets normalized to this 0 value. Okay, so this is one more step. So these steps are things that we need to do in the pre-processing step. The one more important thing is once we have all this data, what do we do in the app area? So that's what I wanted to show is if I go to this app, and then there's something called signal analyzer app. So if you go to the Signal Analyzer app, let's see what happens. So this comes up. So this is something, say for example, this is our walking data, which we have taken from that the live editor. Now this is the data looks like. This is a time domain signal, which means the signal is varying with time. Now that is not enough, because we find out that the mean, the standard deviation, the histogram, they all look same. Because if the histograms are different, then we can use standard deviation. But even if the histograms are same, like what happened for walking versus upstairs, then we cannot use the histogram, the standard deviation. So in that cases, we can go to this Signal Analyzer app, load the data, and once we are in this data, if I go to this display option, click on spectrum, and then what happens here is this takes the fast Fourier transform, which goes to the spectral domain. In MATLAB, there are various ways to go to the spectral domain. You can use a command called FFT. Here in this live editor, I've used something called pwelch. So pwelch is also a command for doing Fourier transform or doing FFTs. But also you can use this app. If you use this app and click on spectrum, it will automatically give you the FFT, the spectral domain data from there. And then if I click on generate script, it will automatically create the MATLAB script for what we have done. So this automatically creates a MATLAB script for what we did. So we don't have to write the script from scratch. It automatically creates for you. So basically, if we look between walking and walking upstairs now in the spectral domain, then we see that the histograms though look different, though look same. In the spectral domain, they're different. So spectral domain means if you look into this figure here, so the blue is walking and red is walking upstairs. So then we see there is a difference in frequency. The red one has a frequency which is lower than the blue one. So there we have a more important feature. So this we found out from the pre-processing step. So then we realized that the frequencies are something that we need to extract as well. And then we can use automatic. So there is something called find picks, by which from the FFT, it automatically finds the picks. And then this can be a good feature, which we can use for our training. Along with mean, standard deviation, and say principal component analysis, we can use the peaks estimated from the spectral domain as one more feature, which might improve the accuracy as well. So like this, you can address the signal processing part of it, which requires domain knowledge. Like somebody needs to know what is spectral domain and those things, because this needs domain knowledge to find out more features. So that's how we do in MATLAB this entire workflow. Okay.
Sir,
I think I'll just, yes, sir.
Actually, sir, one more question is that the hyperparameters. We're talking about the hyperparameters. In the
Right.
this hyperparameters, depending upon the what parameters or what the objects it will decide.
So hyperparameters, I will talk about a little more detail tomorrow about these things as well. So hyperparameters are, say for example, when we are doing a training, it depends on the learning rate. It depends on the epoch size or a batch size. So all these things we need to specify. Right. So basically, you need to specify when we are doing the training. So when we are doing the training operation, we need to specify what will be the learning rate, what will be the epoch, what will be the batch size. So those are the hyperparameters, the things that we need to specify, and they are not changing with training to training. Like this, we specify them, and then they are done, they are set, and then we do the training. But during the training, multiple things are changing. But these are some of the things that we need to, you can think about to be initialization. So we need to initialize them with certain values, and the entire training is dependent on those initial values, on those parameters. I mean, it's not called parameters because parameters in the machine learning or AI terminology, they change after training. These are things which are constant and we specify beforehand. So that is what hyperparameters are. So these are the typical hyperparameters. So there is something called hyperparameter tuning for this entire concept, which is basically finding out the right choice of these values. So this is specific what we need to do before the training operation, and that's what we have been talking about. I mean, we can talk. Yes, sir.
So is it handy that to work on MATLAB and we'll find easier to work with the MATLAB when compared to the Python or some other languages?
So there are different in MATLAB. What we have is it's the visual part is stronger. MATLAB, Python also has multiple different things which is stronger than MATLAB in some ways. MATLAB has certain things which are good inserts, so like signal analyzer, because MATLAB is built for the problem at hand. So it is good for images, signals, whatever the application is. And then there are ways to work with Python, which I'll come into much more detail tomorrow. Like if you have this is specific for some networks like TensorFlow, PyTorch. If we have networks in those, then there is no point in starting again to create the network, because if there is already something in TensorFlow and then we want to just visualize them and generate the code, then why do you want to do it multiple times? Then you can just import something from TensorFlow and use the classification learner app again. So that is where it comes easier, because you can work with both of them. And now it also depends on the environment. Like for me, MATLAB looks easier because I have worked with MATLAB much more than Python. But then if somebody has worked with Python much more, then they might find Python easier. So it depends on which environment you are easier with. But then each has its own ways. What we find is MATLAB contains all these apps, because the apps are kind of the graphical user interface thing. So that is what makes things advantageous in the MATLAB window. The other thing is for MATLAB is if we go for the code deployment part, like generating the C code or generating the CUDA code, like MATLAB by default optimizes the code for that hardware. So if we have done multiple benchmarking studies, so if we have something for the industry, because if they want to have, like if you want to have an automated driving car, and then that car will basically need to do all this AI real time, that gets much faster because the algorithm that we develop gets optimized for the target hardware automatically. So we inbuild those optimization algorithms inside the software. And here we can choose like this FitC auto command that I talked about, that automated machine learning. So those sort of things are easier here because it does, it does the Bayesian optimization, the random search, all those type of algorithms. So in that way, it varies essentially.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
And how to work with both MATLAB and Python, I'll talk about as well tomorrow. Because for neural networks specifically, if there is something in PyTorch or TensorFlow or Caffe, we can just import them rather than building again from scratch. So that is what the advantage there is. Um, okay. Um, okay, so this is what we talked about essentially as well, the hyperparameter tuning. This contains a little more detail, so I will share all these slides anyway. So for example, in hyperparameter tuning, what happens is it finds out what are the parameters that are significant and what are the values of those parameters. And methods can be grid search, random search. So grid search is basically an optimization algorithm where it searches by grid. Random, it uses random number generator to do that. Um, Automated machine learning is what we talked in the has come up in 2020A, the latest version of MATLAB, where we do the everything in automated way using the FitC auto command. If you are using signal processing specifically, there is a concept called wavelets. So the automated machine learning can also do a lot of things with wavelets. So if anybody are interested on that, because wavelets in itself is a huge topic, I'm not going into anything of detail of that, but wavelets can also be used as a very interesting way for finding out more features. Okay. This we have already talked about. Essentially, what we have, the learner app, which came from 2019B. Automatic model selection is from FitC Auto, and CodeGen is the command which we use, or the MATLAB Coder app. The same thing, MATLAB Coder does in the app way, and CodeGen is for the writing command way. This is most for the resources. When we share the slides, you can go for those links, because all these links contains like say for example this hyperparameter optimization. If you go to this link, it will give you a video of how the hyperparameters work. And then same for wavelet scattering and things. Yes, sir.
One more there. What about the license for the 2020?
For license, it depends. I'll talk about that as well. I mean, if you have any kinds of license, please feel free to reach out on those things. We can talk. I mean, Ashish basically looks after the entire of uh, multiple colleges in this region, so he can talk with you specifically on license as well.
No,
Um,
let's suppose personal use. So that's for if I'm using for the personal. That's what I'm. Why?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are multiple different forms of licenses. There are personal things, there are institute licenses, there are courses, there are free courses as well, which I'll talk about. But the form of license, it depends on the products that are needed. Because if it's MATLAB app for artificial intelligence is different. If it's artificial intelligence with say automated driving, it is different. So it depends on the application. The license also works in that way. Yeah, feel free to reach out and then we can see, talk in more detail. Okay, so the other part is once we have the algorithm, we can put it into as an app. So we can create an app which people can run without MATLAB. Say for example, if a friend of mine do not have MATLAB, whatever I create, I can give it to him, and then he or she can run this without using MATLAB. So that can work. That can be an app. We can put it in our phone. We can put in our Android or iOS phones, and it becomes an Android app. So we can do those things, or we can use just generate C code or create the Python code out of it. We can create Python code from here as well, or we can put it in any production servers. Um, Embedded hardware we already talked about. Like if you have a chip or a board or a PLC, or if you want to translate this code to an FPGA platform, uh, Verilog platform, so you can do that as well. Okay, so this is something called the code deployment part. The other thing is which I'm talking a little bit here is we can, so MATLAB coder, we can generate C and C++ code. Apart from that, we can generate Python, Fortran, all these codes as well. So there is because these codes are in open source platforms, so we have good interportability with them. We can easily, so anything in MATLAB Simulink can talk with anything in Java, Python, C. Java is essentially inbuilt in MATLAB because MATLAB is written on top of Java as well. So all these programming languages, Java, Python, C, C++, Fortran, so there is good interportability between all of them. So these are the challenges that we have discussed. Now, if I want to summarize now, so we had accessing data, so we can access data from multiple avenues, including the mobile phone, then pre-processing steps, so mean median modes, or finding out, going to the signal analyzer app, finding out PCAs, so all those type of things. Developing predictive models, which are the machine learning models like the tree, SVM, Bayesian optimization for on top of those algorithms. So those sort of things we can do. And then finally putting this on your app or in the hardware. So that is essentially the entire workflow. So these are our strengths in MATLAB. What you have to do is these things are pretty straightforward to do in all the domains. It's not like only because the machine learning comes in the point of the developing the model, but then there are these other steps as well, and we try to make sure that we address all these other steps as well. Okay, so what we did, we accessed data. So accessing data can be done from it. You can just import Excel spreadsheet from databases, from cloud, anywhere. Basically, we can just use that data. Pre-processing, it can be signal analyzer. It can be finding out mean median modes. It can be for doing something like a simple detecting outliers and taking care of that. So that is a pre-processing step. Feature engineering is for domain specific. Like I think what we did today is going to the signal analyzer app and finding out the FFTs. So that is a signal analyzer app can do. We can do PCS, principal component analysis. We can do simple mean median mode. So these are for signals, but the same things can also work for images as well. If you have any kind of like biomedical images or images from experiments, like my PhD topic was working on atomization. Like when we open up a tap, liquids breaks up into droplets. So we were using those images to find out if we can do a principal component analysis on that, so that it can predict what type of droplets will come from liquid jet. So that sort of things can also be done. Then we use classification learner app. Similarly, we have regression learner app. If you want to do regression, we have not gone into that today because of the time limitation, but I will talk about some resources later on as well. Then the model tuning part, where we did the automated parametric tuning using Bayesian optimization, but you can use random search or grid search method or any of the automated algorithms as well to tune the model to find out the right hyperparameters. And finally is deploying the either generating the C or C++ code or putting it on a hardware. That is the final entire workflow. Okay. These are some of the resources which when we share, we'll get to the links. So it contains, like, if you go to Mathverse website, there are multiple webinars. There are webinars, long webinars. These are all free. You can all attend them. And now we are doing loads of webinars because of lockdown as anyway, but these webinars are also there. There is something of an ebook mastering machine learning. There's something called machine learning tech talks, which are so all the tech talks are like 5 minute longs. So we do not create any video which is more than 5 minutes for the tech talks, but we have videos which are like longer, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Those are in detail. But the tech talk series, this machine learning tech talk series, this contains like multiple videos, each 5 minutes, and talking about the theory, how to do in MATLAB, and then gives on some examples. So like supervised learning, what is unsupervised learning, what is these things, all those things. In terms of courses, this we will talk again tomorrow, but I'll just mention today as well. So all these courses are free for everybody. What you really need to do is basically create a MathWorks ID. And then that can be like using a Gmail ID, or if you have an institute email ID, then you can use the institute email ID. And so MATLAB on-ramp is for basics of MATLAB, Simulink is for basics of Simulink, machine learning on-ramp and deep learning on-ramp is, so both, all these courses except Simulink on-ramp and Stateflow on-ramp, so they run on the browser. That means you do not need to have a MATLAB installed. It runs on, like, you can just, it works in a Google Chrome or Internet Explorer type of environment. So you just go there, you go for MATLAB on-ramp or machine learning on-ramp. So if you go for machine learning on-ramp, then it will tell you the theory of supervised clustering, unsupervised learning, all those things. And then it tells you how to do in MATLAB. It will give you an assignment. And then if you do the assignment, it will go on to the next step. And all these things are, at the end, everybody can get a certificate, but you can also ask your students to do that, because it will be a good assignment, homework problem for all of them.
Dr.
So
Chatterjee, I have
Simulink,
one,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yes, so Dr. Chatterjee, I have one question that whether
Yes, sir.
courses are equivalent to internship for students or they are just for certificate course.
So this course is more of a certificate. These courses, because these courses, each of them are like 2 hours long. 2 hours. I mean, people can get internship because they will learn a lot of things, and then many companies value that, so they can do that and put that on their CV.
No,
But
my
it's,
question.
each of them are 2 hours. Yeah.
So my question is that because the internship used to be of 30 days. So is there any any such type of courses there that
Uh,
can be of 30 days?
right. Yeah. So that
Per
is,
day is
yeah.
okay.
Yes, yes. So these are 2 hour courses, which is not like the longer ones. But I'll go to the next slide actually. So these courses are more of like 16 or 25 hours long, which can be like a 30-day or 22-week program. So these courses are, it can be like that of an internship, what you were saying about, because these are pretty long courses. It tells a lot about theory, tells a lot about, and these also give. Um, so this can be good for students in like 2 weeks or 30 days.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. This, sure. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to reach out if you, I mean, all these courses are there in something called MATLAB Academy. This thing, MATLAB Academy online training. So if you Google MATLAB Academy online training, all these courses will come up. It again depends. So all these, the previous one, these are all free for everybody. This depends on the license agreement with the institute. So whatever depends on that. So you can reach out on what, but these are not very costly or anything. So it's pretty, and we are giving these courses now like very, at a very short, small price as well at this very point. Apart from that, for faculties, another thing I wanted to mention is we work with a lot of faculties throughout the world, and we have multiple courses which are already in the website. So if you go to this page of mathworks.com academia courseware, so this contains lecture notes from faculties, which contains assignments, small projects, all types sort of things. Majority of them are in MATLAB, but then there are other things as well. So these are like more of domain specific. So if you're looking on machine learning, deep learning, you can go for teaching deep learning with MATLAB. Just Google in this page. You can go for MathWorks Academia, deep learning or machine learning, and you can find out an entire semester course developed with some faculty in some part of the world, and it contains all those as well. So feel free to just use them. These are all everybody can download. So speaking of teaching with MATLAB, so we have all these things teaching stuff. So if you want to teach physics with MATLAB, teaching calculus, so all those things are there. Similarly, for teaching deep learning with MATLAB and machine learning with MATLAB is also there. So in the many people are talking about license. So many of the institutes in India now, what we have is something called campus-wide license, which means like we have a portal for everybody. Like if you think about many of the IITs, like all the IITs except say for example one now, everybody is on this campus-wide license, which means there is MATLAB access for everybody with MATLAB online, mobile, all toolboxes everywhere. They can use it just at their home, at their unlimited copies and all those things. So if you're interested on that, feel free to reach out to us as well. And we can see how that can be worked. So that is also there, because that gives you like essentially, because all this machine learning, deep learning part is also interdisciplinary, so to say, which means it uses multiple like signal processing, image processing, and then we don't have to worry about all the toolboxes from these aspects. So license wise, this is there, but feel free to reach out if you need more information on any of this. Again, I'll just end with this machine learning on ramp and deep learning on ramp, because those are very good to get started and free for everybody. You can just create a MathWorks ID and just do this course. Probably machine learning on ramp will be more relatable to what we talked about today. Deep learning on ramp, but machine learning on ramp goes to much more like how do you do in MATLAB. I haven't got into like how to create a matrix, how to do a signal, read a signal, those sort of details, because that is like a more hands-on workshop for a day. We cannot go through that today. But if you want more information, you can go through all these links. Also, I'll again encourage to fill out that Google Forms, because we have a lot of webinars for entire month of May. For different students, faculties, we have like 3-hour webinars as well as 1-hour webinar on machine learning, deep learning, and multiple other webinars. Because of the lockdown situation, we are doing more of them nowadays. So if you sign up for those, and then we can share you all those details of the webinars as well. Also, if you want any information or if you want to conduct a session for your institute and things like that, feel free to reach out. This is my email ID. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll just add Ashish's email ID as well. I think he has put in the chat window, but I'll just write it here as well. Um, okay, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions at any point of time. We can definitely work on in specific detail on specific problems on specific type of things. This is more of an overview. Ashish, do you want to just write your email ID here if you are there on the call? I can just put your email ID here as well then.
Yeah, sure. It's Ashish S at mathworks.com.
Yeah, I found out now. Okay, so I'll just leave with this slide, and then if you have any questions, you can type it out, write down, voiceover, whatever, and then we can talk now, and then you can also reach out later on. Thank you so much.
So, Dr.
Thank
Chatterjee,
you.
Dr.
Yes.
Chatterjee and Mr. Sharma, thank you very much. That really you have given a very nice presentation, and our all participants are acknowledging you for your excellent informative session. And we will meet again tomorrow. Really, it was a nice. People get some knowledge on hands-on training, that how to use machine learning with MATLAB. In fact, very soon in my own institute, we will be organizing and complete 5 days for the student also, but that will be in offline mode. And if online mode is possible, I will talk to my institute people also. So, but for the faculty of our country, it was really a nice session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was good to be part of the session as well. Thanks for us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank you,
giving
sir.
us the opportunity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sharma sir. Thank you, Sharma sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.